What the preacher forgot to say. I almost forgot to do what the preacher forgot to say, actually, this week. It's been in my mind and then kind of slipped my mind. Anyway, what did I forget to say? We're looking at Mark's Gospel. We were looking at the parable of the sower, which is really well-known parable. And then we came across a verse, gave it a bit of attention, but I want to just dig a little bit deeper into this verse because it's a conundrum. And in some ways, just digging deeper into a verse you're not quite sure what it means actually is a fulfillment of what Jesus wants for us in these passages, because he's talking about parables and why he's speaking parables, and he's speaking parables to pull us in, to make us think more. And so he wants us to be asking questions and go, what do you mean by that? He wants his disciples to say, what do you mean by this parable of the sower? So he explains it to them. He loves that, and some people just can't be bothered. Oh, don't really care. Actually, he wants to draw us in so that our hearts and our minds are just exploring the Word of God and the treasure of God. And when that happens, as we explore, it's a beautiful thing. It's not meant to be a mystery that's hard, and some people get it, some people don't, and it's just a bit unfair if you don't get it. It's more like a treasure hunt that anyone can follow, whoever they are, whether they've got schooling, whether they can read or not. It's more about the heart, and God has given us all hearts, and we can all explore this. And there's a delight in treasure hunting, like a children's game. Anyway, so I get to we get to this verse. He's talking very obviously. You don't put a lamp under a basket. You put it on lampstands so you can shine. Nothing is hidden. Everything is to be revealed. This is all about Jesus wanting to reveal things to us, help us understand, and all that kind of thing. And then there's this bit, verse 24, chapter 4. He was saying to them, take care what you listen to. By your standard of measure, it will be measured to you, and more will be given you besides. Now, when Mark uses that phrase, take care what you listen to, when he uses that in other parts of the book, it's about Jesus giving a warning, because you can listen to some kind of weird philosophy, unhelpful things, cultural things that are just not good, just not helpful. Not the kingdom way, they're another way, but they're how people in the culture act. And Jesus says, be careful. Don't just go along with what other people are saying. And so here's a phrase. It could be that he's saying, look, there's a phrase that's out there, and it might be out there in our culture as well. However you do stuff, that's going to be how other people treat you. Therefore, in a sense, you just got to work the system, work the market. Whatever your standard measure, it'll be measured to you, and more will be given you besides. It's like, if you can get ahead, you'll get more. And there is that in our culture. If you can just get ahead, then you'll be fine. If you can get to a place where you've got the cash, got the power, then it will roll on, and it's true. Somehow it seems to be, if you get to that place, you can make it work for you. But lots of people just do not get to that place. They're not able to. They won't ever. So is Jesus condoning that? He says it elsewhere as well. He says a similar phrase where he talks about it in Luke's Gospel. It comes after him saying, this is the measure of the kingdom that I want to give you. It's poured out, it's pressed down, it's overflowing. There is a huge measure of the kingdom. Generosity is the heart of the kingdom. And then he says this, by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. It's like the challenge he's saying is, yeah, okay, so you could go with the culture and just try and get more through the culture, or instead you could go with the kingdom measure, the kingdom culture, which is just be generous. God's been generous to you. Be generous, and see what happens. It may not be that you get loads of cash or loads of power or loads of opportunities coming your way, but what you will get is heaven in your heart, the kingdom in here, eternity in here. That is worth more than millions of pounds. That is the thing, that riches in here that will just take us through into eternity. And on the way we go to eternity, we can spend it now on healing and on hope and on joy and on friendship and on justice, on all kinds of things. So I think what Jesus is doing on reflection with this is he is referring to the way that culture measures itself. He is critiquing it. He says, be careful, don't just go with culture. And the way that culture says, get some more, and or just, have revenge on other people, or just play the game, play the system. He's saying, be careful of that. But there is a measure. And the measure from Luke's gospel, it's the kingdom of heaven. Go with that measure, and more will be added to you, more beside. But it's not necessarily the measurement of money or of power or of self-assertion or whatever else makes us feel good about ourselves in the flesh. It's more of the kingdom of Jesus, which is really good for us. Man, peace, joy, faith, hope. Oh, these things are amazing. So I think he is critiquing, but I think he's bringing in as well, in the same sentence, he's hinting, and we get a little bit more of it in Luke's gospel, he's hinting at the kingdom. Goes on to say, verse 25, whoever has, to him more shall be given. Whoever does not have, even what he has, shall be taken away from him. Again, that's just, sounds horrible. And so I'm wrestling with it. I've been wrestling with it. Going, what do you mean, Jesus? Are you condoning those people who've got lots and they'll get more? And those people who haven't got much, that gets taken away? Surely not. I was just reading an article today about the fact that international aid budget from the UK is being cut. Those who haven't got much, even what they've got may be taken away from them. Now I know that some international aid budget, quite a lot of it gets spent in the UK in order to help people in other places, and I know that some of it won't get to the places it needs to, but there's a principle of what we don't want to do is take away from people who've hardly got anything. I read at the same time that people in the top 4 banks, like Deloitte and whatever, their payments, the partners in those places, the payments are $500,000 a year. It's extraordinary. They're getting more and more, and the poor are getting less and less. Now I know Jesus' heart is for everyone. His heart is for the rich and for the poor. But it's certainly not to rob from the poor so the rich can stay rich. And if he's saying be careful what you listen to, then surely there's a critique in here, and you see it at the end of the 2 parables that are pretty similar in Matthew and Mark, the parable of the talents or the parable of the gold. You see this phrase come at the end of those 2, same phrase, which is why I think there's also something about the kingdom of heaven here, because I think those 2 parables about the kingdom, some people have said, well, maybe those 2 parables are actually about the way that things work on the earth and they don't work in heaven. It's a cruel master and it's just about investments and there's cruelty, but it's prefaced by the kingdom of heaven is like this. So I think what those parables are about are, as we trust in God generously, and it's going back to the seed, as we trust the seed will multiply, and we throw ourselves into generosity, throw ourselves into faith and going, I'm going to give what I've received here, I'm going to give it away. I'm going to invest it in the kingdom and trust that it will double, or it will, there'll be a return for God on his investment in me. And because the master in those parables, he says, you shouldn't just hold this stuff and not give it away. So what he does to the person who holds it selfishly, he says, take that and give it to the person who's really given away, given and invested. And so my feeling on this one, looking at those other 2 parables where the same phrase comes, is that where, say, the woman who gives just 2 mites, she gives everything, then I think God will take people, the stuff that is there, and people have been selfish about it, and he will bless that woman in eternity, and she will receive extraordinary riches. And even here on earth, there will be a richness in her heart because she gave everything. And so I think this verse here is, yes, it will be again, it's a critique of, it looks like in our society, those who've got loads will get more, and those who've got nothing, that's going to be taken away from them. We don't want that. But in the kingdom of heaven, when you give away lots of yourself, when you give away love and kindness, when you're generous, then there is an incredible result. And we've seen in the parable of the sower, 30, 60, 100-fold. And when you don't give away stuff, then what happens is you lose it. You lose it. If you're not generous, you lose the hope and the goodness, the little bit that you had. And it's not that God's snatching it from you, it's that you let go of it. You lose it. The enemy snatches the seed, the word of God. He takes it away, what little we had. And so I think what we've got in these two verses, just to sum up, yes, they're about the culture, a critique about the culture, and then Jesus uses the phrases of the culture, turns them slightly and says, hey, the kingdom of heaven is like this as well, but in a different way. The kingdom of heaven is you take a little bit of it and it will really multiply. You go generous and God will add to you. It's not about money, it's not about power, it's not about fame. It's about the riches of himself in your heart. It's Christ in your heart. If you hold on to things, we end up losing it. We end up missing everything. But if you let go and you say, God, I want more of you, then he wants to sow his word into us. So there you go. Have a think. Have a look. Read the scholars. They've all got different ideas on these things, but that's where I've come to in the last few weeks as I've been thinking about it. Thanks for listening.